How you doing, everybody? Whoever is here. Um, Let me know about the if the video's okay and the sound is okay. All right. Um, Hi Joseph, how you doing? Those close-ups you do are really great. I really like to see those. I've got to get better at it. The pictures that you had of I think it was a Friedrich 2 and the diamond was some of the best I've ever seen. Because I've tried to take them up myself. Hi, Robert. How you doing? Steve, good to see you. Um, what I'm doing, what I thought about. Oh, good, great, thank you. Um, what I was thinking about was that after, this always happens whenever the awards come out. Hi, hater. Um, w- Whenever the awards come out for the Grand Prix, everybody says, "Oh, they should have done this. They should have done that." And I was thinking, well, uh, if you were a judge, uh, what would you look for? And instead of that, I was thinking, well, what if you were a watchmaker and you wanted to make a watch that would win? Hey, Tim. And so I thought, well, what would you do? And taking a look at the ones that did win, hi, John. Look at the ones that did win. What is it that they have about them that is in any way prize-worthy. I'll put it that way. Now, this varies in the different in the different categories, um, but where would you start? In other words, what would you even start thinking about? Say, I want to make a watch. We'll start with a carte blanche, and what would be the first thing that you'd want to think about? Hi, Jonathan. Um, in other words, like well, you're looking at these and you say, "Oh, they should have gotten this one. They should have gotten this one." Now, one thing that we'll set aside for now is how they look. There's certain categories, like the jewelry category and the what they call artistic crafts category, where that's what the main thing is. But otherwise, what would be the basic starting point? You want to make the watch. Copy Laurent Ferrier micro rotor. Okay, so is a micro rotor important? Is that it, or why does he use a micro rotor? Why would Laurent Ferrier use a micro rotor? Excuse me, instead of a big one? My own thoughts about that was in order to keep it thinner. Micro rotors don't take up as much room. Uh, okay, let's see. Based on previous awards, the most important feature seems to be the name. I would name mine Tudor Piguet. Yeah, well, there's an idea. See movement. Ah, there you go. That's what I'd start with too. And but then I started thinking about it, and in terms of a movement, there's certain things that are pretty standard. Hey, Mark. I mean, you only have so many things that make up a movement. You've got the barrel, then you have the gear train, you have the escapement, the pallet fork, and then the hair hairpin, the hairspring. And that I was thinking, okay, so you got those. And so what would you do with those in that context? Was one of the sort of like what would be the goal? Showcase more of the movement. Okay, that's one thing. A lot of them, that's the last thing they want to do. But Robert, I agree. Hey, Eamon. Imagine if GPHG cared about real horology. Oh, come on now. Don't be that way. We're we're making a watch by us who we do care about real horology. So where where would we go with that? We could be sort of cynical about it, but I mean that's sort of acting like the soiled virgin. Woo-hoo. Come on, we're beyond that. Okay, hey, Thomas. Okay, Tim, you got a drink there. That's your answer to everything. Okay, pay off the judges. Okay, all right, you guys, come on now. You got to have something. Um, Low again. Hi, Andrew. We're trying to come up with a starting point. We're going to make a watch. We got nothing. We want to make a watch that is going to win one of the categories. Well, let's start with the categories. Eamon, twin remontoir, natural escapement, gyro tourbillon. Okay, what do those do, Eamon? What do those do? What would a twin remontoir do? Natural escapement. What is their sort of their overall point? Movement and dial are key. Yes, that's true. Is there a Breguet or Daniels escapement design that could be refined? Okay, but what does that go to? Look cool. All right. Probably keep time okay. Yeah. The some point and again, this is my own thing, and I don't know whether this would be something that would be winnable or not. And this is going back to some of the most basic elements of mechanical timekeeping, that's constant force. Some element of constant force. Now, even you mentioned a remontoir. Uh, any watch, I think, with just a single remontoir, nothing, no, beyond that. We're going to start simple. My God, that would be, to me, it would be one thing if you could put a remontoir into a watch. I think that in and of itself would be one of the key things because it deals directly with constant force. It's not something that's easy to do and sort of cool. Okay. Yeah, Tour Beyond. That's exactly right. Something that has to do with constant force. You know, another constant force one that I really like, but you don't think much about, and very few watchmakers use it, is the double barrels in parallel. And that is very much for maintaining constant force. The most important thing, Steve says, would be the movement, manual wind, artist details. Okay, yeah, that would be a good combination. Do they look for those? Okay, Mark, it goes to bringing to market something different. Laurent Ferrier did it. Yes, he did. Um, as did F.P. Jorn, Kerry Wooten Lonan, a lot of these other guys. Hey, Junior. Hey, Mark. Uh, a manual wind. I like a manual wind. I really do because you don't have to deal with all of the stuff you have to deal with an automatic. And nor in automatics, you're either gonna, if you're gonna make it thinner, you're gonna need a micro rotor, which will then take up more room. So you have to have a smaller balance wheel. Um, For chronometer category, natural escapement with Maltese cross for constant force, more affordable than remontoir. Good point. That's another thing too. I would really like to see. I would rather see a watch with one good element for constant force than that you could afford than trying to jam in as many as you could think of. Which was going to be more expensive, and sometimes they can even work at cross purposes. Why do Philippe Dufour watches sell for 10 million quality time taken to build? I don't know. They've got. I think there's a lot to what Philippe Dufour does, and one of the main things I think, John, is that he's a perfectionist. I mean, if you look closely, there's sort of the rounded beveling that he does. The anglaise is almost, that's huge, but that's in the context of a lot of other things that are going on in the movement. Good question, Eamon. Is a natural escapement with a barrel for each escapement as good as a parallel barrels? I don't know. That's a good question, and I don't have the answer to that. All I know is that I like the concept and I understand the concept of the double barrel better than I understand the concept of a natural escapement. Um, every time I read about and sort of go into a natural escapement, I forgot what I I forget about it. But that's the kind of questions I think that we do need to ask. Is that, well, here we have different ways of trying to have constant force. And so, which one would we put in that would be sort of the most bang for the buck, for lack of a better term? Is the Daniels escapement still as good as, I mean, if it's that good, why is the old Swiss escapement still used? What's it called? It's not called the Swiss escapement. It's the ah, forgot it. Well, just sort of the regular regular escapement. Um, I don't know. It's an interesting thing. One of the things, if you take an Omega, they now, I think they have the silicon hairsprings, and they have a lot of other things, and they work well. If you have the silicon escapement and you have the silicon hairsprings, you have a lot going for you. Okay, you can't adjust the hairspring. I don't know what's going to happen to the escapement, but they're good primarily because they're totally non-magnetic. Totally. To me, though, they're sort of like, you can start putting in silicon to replace metal in a lot of different places. But I think at some point you end up with something that's really not a traditional watch. Now, a lot of people disagree with that, and that's fine. But, I don't want to pay a fortune for a watch that to me takes a shortcut. Now, by the same token, you have huge advantages to a quartz watch, to a smartwatch, to a lot of these other things. And so that I think is going to be an issue, but I think for more and more watch companies seem to be sticking in the silicon. I don't know if companies like FP Journe or Kerry Voot and Lonan will. I do know that FP Journe was taking a look at the silicon hairsprings that were made at the firehouse in San Francisco. Firehouse is a name of a silicon baker, I guess. I like it when there's something that's truly genius about a watch. It can be something small like those gears without play that Agenor makes. Oh yes. That is something that I like too. Here what you have, if you have any play at all, and you're especially around the second hand where you have the most movement, every little play is going to offset something somehow. And if you can reduce that to near zero, then you have something I think that is brilliant. By the way, Hater, they're called Agen ES, AGEN capital ESE. I don't know what the ESE is for, but that's what they're called. Uh, Something big like complication, the very smart way of doing it. Yeah, Hater, this is why I like the Oxen Junior. Those things, the guy has tons and tons of really very interesting things that he's able to do without a lot of parts. He's the guy that put together the uh, perpetual calendar with only 9 parts. I think that's another thing that I'd like to see, is that rather than piling up complications on top of complications and pouring in more and more parts, I'd rather see the same thing done with fewer parts and with some kind of ingenious way. I don't know if you've ever seen them or not, but the what are they called, the retrograde movement. that Jean Marc Viderec did at Agenor is super simple. You look at the thing, it's like, gee, why didn't anybody else think of that? Because of its simplicity. And I think that's important too. Um, so I'd rather see what I guess you'd call it a big complication done in a small way, or done with a minimalist number of parts, but with a sort of maximum ingenuity. Now, do you think let me ask you guys this now, and looking at these watches, where do you see that? Um, I don't know about the Bulgari, the one that won the grand prize, what it's got going for it. I do know that the Van Cleef and Arpels Ladies Complication does have one of those uh, retrograde movements by Agenor. The Grand Seiko, I it's not Grand Seiko that I don't like. It's sort of this 36,000 DPH. I call you beating it like a rented mule. Now you will get greater accuracy with that. I'm not arguing that. You get even more if you go higher and get to the point where you have a frequency like a quartz. But is that important or not? In some ways, most of the tip top watchmakers are using 3 hertz or less in their movement. Not all of them, but most of them. Okay, let's see what you say. Hey, Watch Nicholas, how you doing? Um, the Bulgari was just really a perpetual calendar, not very special. A thin perpetual calendar. Maybe that was the big thing, Eamon. That there's a lot to be said for thinness. One of the things that I like a lot, I like big balance wheels, and the reason I like big balance wheels is that they tend to have they tend to be steadier, and when they get bumped, they regain the same pace quicker than the smaller ones. I don't know why, but they do. Mark, let's see. Given the lever escapement. That's one thing I was trying to remember. Mark, thank you. And the speed of the typical mechanical watch with lever escapement is good enough to get the job done to meet COSC requirements. Yeah, that's true. I think. Well, here's the thing. The I believe, and again, I went into this in great detail some time ago, but then I forgot what all the details about it because so many other things came along. I think the thing that's so great about the Daniels escapement is that it reduces friction, and that's important. Um, how far more can we go with complications? Has everything been achieved? We are going back to basics with quality being key. That's a good point. There's I forgot when it was. There was some time that there was this guy who worked for the patents office around in the early 1900s, around 1905 or something like that. And one day he quit. He said, "I just can't think of anything more that can be invented." What I thought, whoa, you quit way too soon. And so I think that and after looking at the Oxen Junior watches, I thought, my God, look at this thinking of a whole new way of information design. I think is was another thing. Um, you can only get better accuracy by making a higher beat watch or a balance wheel with more mass. However, a balance with more mass is limited to the size of the watch. Yeah, that's true, but there are a lot of different things that they do, and I don't think, Mark, that those are the only two things that you can choose from. Um, I I do agree with you that you bring in a higher beat and you do get more accuracy, or you can get more accuracy, but you also beat up the parts more. And as you beat up the parts more, you're going to lose accuracy because they're getting beat up. All right. So and I was talking to the guy who's Ake Riva, And I was asking him, I said, "How come you have why is it that you use 2.5 hertz?" Also, I asked Kerry Root and Lana the same thing. But Acuvita says one thing, the watch owner with a um, smaller VPH, you can see what's going on. And the uh, looking at the interaction between the pallet fork and the escapement and the hair, to me, it can be mesmerizing. A lot of people have said that about the tourbillon, and that is something about that. Okay, big balance wheels. Love big balance wheels. Evening from Sweden. How you doing, Sweden? You guys taking care of yourself? Um, the guy who uses big balance wheels is that if you look at Kerry Woot and Lonen's watches, all of them have big balance wheels. And I think, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that Gronfeld does too. The Gronfeld brothers. They're really nice big ones. Um, as far as far-fetched as it sounds currently, but I think the next step may be calculating time days on other planets such as Mars as we venture out. I could see Musk requesting this. That is an interesting idea with different days and oh yeah, that would be very interesting. Is this reaching out? But it could be an added complication. It sure could. Yeah, you have a time, you got it 2 times, one on Earth and one on Mars, that could be very cool thing to have, or something simpler on the moon. There's all kinds of moon phases, and so I think that, Christian Vanderclaw, I'd love to see something that he did with sort of moon time and Earth time. Let's see, they are fully handmade, and that takes time, however, is much more. Okay, Joseph, you bring up a really excellent point, unfortunately. And these are the handmade watches cost more because the maker has to spend so much time on each one. If you if you have sort of like a cranking machine and out comes a watch every, 60 watches a minute, something like that. Yeah, that's you can bring the price down that way, but on the other hand, if you have to spend, days and days to make a single watch like, Roger Smith does, and yeah, that's another thing is ah, let me tell you how this might be done. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Ophion or not. They're a Spanish company, and they make these really interesting watches. And what they did for the movement, they got a movement from Teletime. And what happened, Teletime went broke. I think Festina bought them, and they and what Opium did, somehow they made some kind of deal with Festina to get that movement, which was the old Teletime movement. And they have a company that uses nanotechnology in terms and micro robotics and things like that. And so here you have this very, very complex, high skill activity in watchmaking that can be cranked out by using this kind of these computer controlled and related um, creation. I mean, there's sort of like a factory worker that's a genius, but does it really quick. And you can turn them on and leave them on all day and all night, and you can make as many of them as you want. I think that is a possibility of course, it might be a pretty big investment up front, but would be one way to do this, um, and to you could recreate, for example, one of the original Abraham Brigade movements, and then put in uh, some newer things that are still within the within the same context. I don't know. Silicon doesn't get beat up. No, silicon doesn't. You're right. So that's no, I wasn't including silicon. Silicon is that there's incredible advantages to using silicon. Okay, that I agree with 100%. And but it doesn't change the fact that it's silicon, right? Instead of one of the more traditional metals that they have to really think through a lot more to keep them from becoming magnetized, which seems to be an ongoing problem. Hey, Apar, how you doing, man? I think if you look at the new escapement designs for the GS high bead and increased balance wheel mass, then you could reduce your speed to 18,000 BPH. Maybe you could, Mark. I don't know. That would be interesting. Hi, Buck. Sen used a diamond pallet. What other super hard, low friction materials have yet to be tried? Well, Buck, uh, they've been using ruby pallets for a long time. And I don't know how much harder diamond is than rubies, but they're both, I think, I think different types of carbuncles, but I'm not positive on that. Um, the big thing, they've been also using silicon pallets. Again, well, neither the ruby nor the silicon have any kind of magnetizing features to them. Hey, Davy boys, a gyro tourbillon is hypnotizing, but it's just a different level of technical ability. Yeah, this is, they have a whole category that's a tourbillon, and it's sort of like a tourbillon really represents some kind of high quality watchmaking. But like I said, if there's certain kinds of things, now you're finding the price of tourbillons. You can get a tourbillon for under 1,000. There's the a company in Hong Kong called Perpetual, and they make a tourbillon for very little. Did you see the anti-cathia mechanism? No, I didn't. Let's see, Joseph. Speaking of Mars time, Konstantin Chaikin just released his interesting Martian tourbillon for watch only. Yeah. Well, I was watching that. I don't know if any of the rest of you saw the watch only auction. And the thing about the auction is that all the money goes to, I think, some kind of curing some kind of cancer, I believe. But the point is that the amount of money they spent, I think it was 650,000 Swiss francs for for the what was it, the tutor, for like a 7,000 uh Swiss franc tutor for $650,000. I think there may have been a little Rolex money in there to jack it up, but I'm not sure. Hi, Truman. Sorry you're late. That's okay. Lured away by watch Grinja. Okay. Um, Palette. Yeah, Tim, Patek is silicon. Yeah, I know they have been for a number of years. I think, Tim, what happened is that when Patek Philippe decided to have their own seal of approval, that was when that happened. I think um, the Geneva seal guy said no silicon, Jack, and they said, well, too bad, we want it, and they got it. Okay, watch Nicole. Thanks. Um, yeah, I don't. John, you're right. I don't own a Rolex, and I don't hate silicon. What it is that you don't have to be as ingenious if you use silicon. It makes the problem more interesting. Look what both Rolex and H. Moser have done uh, to get around using silicon, and also the number of other watch companies that have used different kinds of metals like niobium and titanium and in Rolex's case is chromium to put together these compounds that uh, are alloys really that are minimize magnetism. You could do the same thing. Say, well, what we'll do is we'll bake up a they have like a sheet of all of these little hairsprings, silicon hairsprings, you know, whip them in the microwave and and nuke them. Let's see. The Traveling Nova. Oh my God, told you. I'm not sure what you told me, but I believe you. Hey, Richard. I'm very well. Diamond is much harder than ruby, is it? Okay. But it splits easier. I didn't know that. Um, my only diamond is one that acts as a cap for the balance in my uh, I can't think of any anymore. My laying in Heim. Okay, let's see. Diamonds are 10 on Mohs hardness scale, which while carbuncles, carnumdum are 9. Okay, that's good to know. I mean, that there you got a exact difference. Heard something about precision engineering supplying AP with their Strawman. Truman, this is something that's really interesting. Um, when I interviewed Malin about that, he was telling me is that given the number of watches that they produced annually, I'm talking about H. Moser, they have like they're making 50, 60,000 Strawman hairsprings, and but they're only putting out about maybe 2, 3,000 watches. So they're going somewhere. So it doesn't surprise me at all. There's also too the Ataculpa that's part of the Sandoz family vertical integration, and they make the hairsprings for uh, all of the all of the stuff that for Vaucher movements and for, of course, the Parmigiani. The thing about it though is that they're talking like 2 or 300,000 of them, and that's nowhere near what either Vaucher puts out. They sell independently or Parmigiani has. So there are a lot of companies that use that. There was one thing that the rancher sent me today, and it was an article from the Financial Times. Unfortunately, the Financial Times, I don't subscribe to it, so I couldn't read the whole thing. But what they're talking about in that article is that the huge amount of secrecy that goes on in the watchmaking. So somebody says, "Yeah, we make our in-house everything," and they don't. They just flat out don't because they might have their hands from the hands made by somebody, the hairspring by somebody, these, this, and this, and this, and then they have they outsource, not outsource, but they have some gear company makes the gears for them uh, to their specs, for their own movements. So it's a really interesting kind of dance that they're doing with that. I mentioned not long ago about an article that Patek Philippe magazine had about Fiedler hands. Why do they talk about those hands in such glowing terms? Well, probably because they're using them along with Rolex and some other people that they will never tell us about ever. Um, heard something. Yeah, yeah, right. No, Truman, you're probably right. See, this part of this big secrecy thing. I don't know. That's the way they are. Traveling Nomad, GS is the only true in-house. Grand Seiko. Well, okay. If that's if you say so. Uh, hey, guest 2798. I think that the easiest way to win a prize is to make a perpetual calendar world timer, but the question is how would you put a world timer complication on a perpetual calendar? That that might be it. It's frying pan time. I guess my time is up. Okay. Um, uh, yeah. Truman, I think you're right. Rolex Rolex may be using somebody else's hands, and the same may be true for Moser. But I'm not saying that. Hey, Foreman, the holes in my cheese are 10% Swiss, so the holes are Swiss made. Okay, guys. All right, gotta run. Thank you all for doing this. And like I said, the exercise is really more than anything else for us to think about what really is important in horology. And if we can come up with some good answer to it, not that the Grand Prix would ever listen to us, but somebody might. We'll see you guys.